Welcome to the Rolling Thru Podcast. I'm Teres Ortiz, a trainer, jiu-jitsu athlete, and physical therapy student. This podcast is all about bridging the gap between training, recovery, and performance through a holistic approach to fitness and health. Whether you're a combat sports athlete or just looking to move, feel, and perform better, you'll get insights from top coaches, athletes, and experts on strength and conditioning, injury prevention, and mindset. If you want to train smarter, stay injury-free, and optimize your performance, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Emily Swope, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Very excited.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for, as I move and make a lot of couch noise, but thank you for inviting me into y'all's home. I know a little tough situation. I was like, yeah, we can record in Austin. You're like, oh, where? And I was like, I was hoping you would extend the invitation.
Yes, welcome to my humble abode.
Yeah, I didn't feel like spending more money on a studio. I was like, yeah, we'll take the show on the road. It'll be fine. But all right, Emily, if you can introduce yourself to people who don't know who you are and give a little bit of background of what you've been studying, what you're looking to pursue, what you're working on right now, so people can kind of get an idea of who Emily Swope is.
Yeah, well, my name is Emily Swope. I'm from Austin, Texas. I went to Texas State University in San Marcos, where I got my bachelor's degree in nutrition and foods. And then I just recently graduated in December from Saybrook University. It's online based out of California, with my master's degree in integrative and functional nutrition. And with that, I am currently studying to become a certified nutrition specialist. So I'm in an internship program where I earn hours. I see real clients, real people. I help them with their nutrition goals. And I just kind of build my own business. So it's a little baby business right now, like I like to tell people. So we're just kind of getting started. But I'm super excited. I love helping people in general, but I especially love helping people feel good and, achieve their nutrition goals or just their life health goals in general. So.
Whenever you were studying in school, was your goal always to work with clients one-on-one, like in nutrition? Because I guess call me ignorant, but I don't know of a lot of I don't know all the career paths you can do in nutrition, right? And so I know like some people in the exercise science world, the kines world, yes, there's always the option to work one-on-one with people, but then there's the option to contribute to maybe research or stuff like that. So was your goal always kind of one-on-one client to provider services?
Yeah, so there's obviously room for, research and all that kind of stuff, but that was definitely not my strong suit. I had to take research classes in college, and it was definitely like, all right, we're just getting through this one. I'm a people person. I like to talk to people. I like to see people face to face. I love helping people. I think I'm really good at talking to people. So I've always wanted to have it be client facing, client to provider. I was going to do a registered dietitian track when I was in undergrad because that's all they talked about. But then I kind of did my own research and I kind of dove into what else could I do that's, not in a hospital setting, because being in a hospital never really called to me. That's not something that I ever really felt called to do. So I was like, how do I go about helping people in a different way? So I started looking and I found out that I could be a certified nutrition specialist, which is basically just one tier below registered dietitian. But I had to get a master's degree to do it, and I had to get a certain number of hours. So that's kind of what led me to being a student at Saybrook and earning those hours. So yeah, and it kind of gives me more freedom to practice on my own, to be my own boss, I guess you could say. So I get to make my own business, grow my own clientele, and have it kind of just be me helping other people instead of me being under somebody, which is not a problem, but for right now it's just just me. So
okay. When in your life did you kind of decide that nutrition was the route you wanted to dive down? Because I know maybe I'm biased, but I never once thought of doing that ever, and I don't know anyone that has. I don't know anyone that's studying nutrition or pursuing that as a career, right? And it's not. It's really not that popular in Western medicine, like pursuing a career in nutrition. It's normally either medicine or treatment. So for you, how did that come about?
So it really came from my mom. My mom was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, and she got really sick. And I experienced it firsthand, obviously living here, seeing her get sick. But she wasn't going to take it laying down. So she was like, I'm going to go out and find a way to make myself feel better and to get rid of whatever is going on. And, Western medicine, like you said, most people don't talk about autoimmune disorders. So the doctors weren't really sure what was going on. So she finally went and saw a functional medicine doctor, and they were like, you have an autoimmune disorder. And it just kind of opened this whole door for my mom's healing journey. And then of course me and my brother and my dad being with her, we kind of all fell into it as a family. So we all changed the way we were eating. We eliminated gluten, dairy, all the major allergens, and like it just completely transformed our whole family, especially my mom, obviously being the one that was diagnosed. So it just it started me at a younger age, kind of understanding like the power of food and how it affects just your whole life and your whole being. And then your environment as well, your environmental toxins just kind of go into that. So it just kind of came from being at home and witnessing firsthand my mom's journey. And then kind of figuring out, navigating how can I use my personal experience and how it's helped me and my family and turn that into a career. So when I went to Texas State, my first year, everybody's kind of figuring out like, what am I doing here? Like, I have no idea. So I was going to be a nurse. I was going to be a speech pathologist. I was going to be, I don't even know what else. And then I found the nutritionist program and I was like, this seems really cool. So I went through the whole thing and it changed my life. So it's definitely not a common thing. Most people are like, oh, you're just a nutritionist. I'm like, yes, but also I have a little bit more education than I guess the normal person. So yeah.
And I've talked about it before, but right now I'm a trainer at a Gold's Gym, and I get a lot of people coming and ask me about nutrition advice. And my nutrition expertise, I guess, is very limited in that I only have nutrition education from like my training certifications, and then I took a nutrition class in my undergrad. Who shout out Dr. Mack, my professor.
Yes, I know her.
Yes,
she's great.
She's great. She did a very good job. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I took that class. But my point is that I've gone through my undergrad only taking one nutrition class as an exercise science major, and then as a trainer, and people ask me every day about nutrition advice, and I have not a ton of stuff to give them. Right? If I only let my knowledge be filled by the things that, like my certification in my undergrad, I wouldn't have a ton of knowledge based on around nutrition. Is my point. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying all that to say that. People come up to me all the time asking about nutrition advice. I'm not really the proper person to give it to them, and I always kind of refer them out. I answer their questions because normally it's not very complex. It's like, how much protein should I eat?
Right.
What's this? How do I lose weight? Stuff like that. But there's a lot of confusion, and I feel like in the space of nutrition, whether it's in exercise or in health, with just like simple vocabulary, and that earlier you were saying, you were talking about a dietitian, right? But then there's the label of nutritionist versus dietitian, right? And I am not the smartest guy in the world, so sometimes I have to Google them because I know one is a degree, one is a simple certification that you could get in like a weekend.
Right.
So if you want to educate me briefly on which one was which, because I forget constantly.
Yeah, so registered dietitian, you have to have a bachelor's degree. And I believe starting either this year or next year, you also have to have a master's degree. So you have to have 2 degrees. Really? Yeah, so I didn't have to get the master's. I got one anyways. But now everybody that goes through they call it a dietetics program. Your university has to be an accredited university. So you have to check off all these boxes for different, I don't know if you'd call them, I guess, what am I trying to think of? Credentials, I guess, or like certain things that you have to accomplish. So your teacher will say, yes, you met this standard, and you have to go through them all in your undergrad. So you have to make sure that your university is accredited, and then you graduate, and then you have to take a test. You have to do an internship, you have to do hours, you have to do all these kinds of things. So it takes several years to become a registered dietitian, whereas you said, nutritionist or a health coach, those are things that you can do just like, an online course or, go to like, I don't know where else you would get them. I'm not very familiar with like that world,
but like $100.
Yeah, you can pay a very small fee and you can get this, nutritionist attached to your credential. But again, being a registered dietitian, you get the RD attached to your name. So it's kind of like an MD for a doctor or, a PT for you. So you get that little label attached to your name. And then you're also licensed with your state. So there's different state laws. So every state is different. There's also a lot of laws as far as like what you can call yourself. Like if you go just the health coach, nutritionist route, you can't call yourself registered dietitian, obviously because you are not one. So it's kind of just all about being honest and like not misleading people. And then kind of for me, it would be a CNS, certified nutrition specialist. And then you would also be a licensed dietitian. So you get 2 after your name. I think registered dietitians also get the licensed dietitian nutritionist at the end of their name. So you just want to be on the lookout if you're if you're going to go to somebody and you want to start working with somebody, just make sure that they have the credential that you're seeking, and do your research if you feel like it. But yeah, there's definitely certain ways to go about getting credentials. So
yeah, and kind of what you're describing right now, what we're talking about right now, is that there is levels to the education side of it in terms of nutrition, and that's not to say that your education makes you as a practitioner, and that if you don't have your master's yet, you don't know what you're talking about. And that's not always the case. But in the world that we live in today, where everyone has a cell phone and everyone has a voice on the internet, like we do right now, fortunately, but there's a lot of different resources out there, and there's a lot of different confusion because there's a lot of different opinions and a lot of people sharing their opinions. And we can argue if those people not deserve to share their opinion. Everyone deserves to share their opinion. But if everyone should have their opinion taken as fact, I guess I should say. What's your opinion on, I guess, that as a whole, and that the whole nutrition field has become really oversaturated and overanalyzed by people that aren't necessarily always qualified to talk about these things, whether it's fad diets or crash diets or carnivore, this, that, veganism, whatever. And they all kind of go through their phase. Keto all kind of goes in and out. And right now it's like the whole carnivore thing is very big.
Yeah.
I know I'm giving you a lot right now, but
it's okay.
What's your opinion on kind of that whole trend? Because I guess it is almost positive that people are caring a little bit more about what they're eating. Now, are they making the perfect choices? I don't know. That's your, tell me, are they?
I think it's definitely like a niche thing. You can find exactly what you're looking for pretty much instantly on the internet. You're looking for information on GLP-1. You type it into Google, Chat GPT, like anything like that. You're going to get thousands of results instantly. And people tend to just take things at face value, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it, and you're guilty of it. And it doesn't even have to be nutrition or exercise related. You want to know something, you Google it, and you take the first thing that Google pops up with, and it's got that AI feature now where it just kind of like summarizes everything for you. You read that, you're like, that must be it, right? Because why would the internet lie to me? So again, there's nothing wrong with taking it at face value if it's something that's, you just want to know a simple fact and you look up that fact, you're like, great, now I know it. But when it comes to your health, I am of the opinion that you should always dive deeper. There's always more to the story. You're going to find your niche, whether it be on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever. There's always somebody who's talking about exactly what you want to know about. And I think it's just about kind of sifting through the information so that you have all the facts before you make a decision on, I'm going to try this diet, or I'm going to try this supplement, or something like that. And if you're not working with a healthcare provider, I think that's even more important to like do your own research and make sure the research is backed and qualified before you just go, start taking a supplement or something like that. If you're working with a healthcare provider, it's different because they're qualified and they're giving you the best information that they can. But I think it's just about kind of looking beyond what's just put out there at face value, because the internet's a scary place. And, especially for young kids, I work with kids, people are so easily influenced by what they see. And so, that you see your favorite influencer taking this diet pill or like doing this diet, you're like, oh, well, they look like that. I want to look like this person. So like, let me go follow what they're doing. When in reality, that may not be what's best for you because you are different than the person you're looking at. So again, that all just comes back to what I was saying. Do your own research, figure out what it is that you really want, and then like go out and find that thing. And ask for help if you need it. That's what people like me are studying to do, to help people that want to be helped. Talk to your doctor, talk to somebody that you trust. You don't have to do it all by yourself. So
yeah. And you mentioned GLP-1s, and I think that's very relevant right now. And I don't know how much you have seen GLP-1s being used with people you work with. I don't know if you've seen that at all lately.
Yeah.
But how have you seen that affect the people you're working with? Because personally, I've had like one client that was on Ozempic specifically, and they were a weight loss client, and they lost weight regardless of what I was going to do in the gym. They were losing weight, but they were losing a lot of everything, and that their body fat percentage stayed the same, and for a period of a couple weeks it would increase like slightly, which was interesting because people don't realize that with a lot of these medications that, yes, they make you lose size, but they make you lose everything. And then it's the fat, the muscle mass, bone density. So yes, the scale weight goes down, which is beneficial if you're extremely overweight. But for the average person that is mildly overweight and just has a high body fat percentage, getting on something like Ozempic, in my opinion, is not the right decision. What is your experience with GLP-1s in your field so far?
Yeah, so I don't have very many clients that are on a GLP-1, but I do have a lot of people, just not even just clients, but just friends in general. Because, you tell somebody that you major in nutrition, they're like, oh, so you must know everything there is to know about food and diet and how to make me look good. I'm like, well, yes, it is a multitude of things and everybody's different, but yes. And they come and ask me, they're like, so should I be on a GLP-1? Just like run-of-the-mill, healthy individuals? And my answer is always no. Because, there's Ozempic, there's Wegovy, there's hers, which is, they advertise it as the same active ingredient as Ozempic. You can just get it without a prescription. And
can you really?
I don't know. I think you might not be able to. My fact check guy, Matthew. But they advertise it as, you can order it online. You can get it, shipped to your house.
It's probably like I know, I don't mean to interrupt you there,
okay.
But I know there's you can have the online chat with a doctor.
Yes.
And get prescription medication shipped to you, and it's in a day. I can't read that.
Can't read that from here. You need a prescription? Okay.
I'm assuming an online
service. But it would
service.
be an online doctor. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like how.
So they make it easier than you can do it from your home. They say, do it from your home and get a GLP-1. And in my opinion, GLP-1s, they serve their purpose. They do exactly what you said that your client was on it for, that you lose weight, but you lose everything. And in my opinion, not everybody needs to be on it. If you are, there are morbidly obese people who are if they don't do something, they will end up with a chronic disease or, something worse than that. And, they just need something to kind of get them started so that they don't just continue on this massive downhill slide. In that case, if a medical doctor says that this is the only way that you are going to be okay, then for a period of time, I think it's okay. But I don't believe it should be a long-term solution to somebody who's just I just want to lose 5 to 10 pounds. There's so many other ways that you can go about that, going to the gym, talking to somebody like you, talking to somebody like me, or both, go to your gym, talk to a personal trainer, and then find somebody like me who, can help you with the nutrition aspect, because they go hand in hand. I'm sure you've seen that firsthand working at the gym. People assume that oh, well, I went and I did this thing at the gym. Well, if you're not eating right, if you go home and you eat McDonald's, it's going to basically cancel out everything you just did. So they go hand in hand. If you want to achieve your goals, got to do the work. So I think the GLP-1s have their role and they have their place, but it's definitely not a quick fix like most people think it is.
Yeah. And I've talked to MDs and I've talked to physicians, and I've used some resources online on some doctors' opinions on GLP-1s. And at the end of the day, it is doctor prescribed. So there's got to be people out there prescribing it, right? But some of the ones I've talked to talk about how medication intervention is kind of, you see it on TV and it's prescribed as this fix. But what they don't advertise is the percentage of those that it actually fixes. And a lot of times it's the vast majority, it doesn't get the results that they're looking for, whether it's a GLP-1 or some other weight loss medication.
Right.
And a lot of what I'm hearing from the people I'm talking to, maybe I'm biased about it, but that there is no better intervention than diet and exercise for weight loss.
It's true.
Yeah. And from what I've seen it's because weight gain isn't exactly yes, it is a science, and it's an overconsumption of calories, right? Is the most elementary way we can explain it. But it's people aren't robots, in that it's not always, yes, it is calories in, calories out, but there's a brain attached to these people, and there's feelings attached to these people, and there's a feeling of consuming food, and maybe it's a comfort. Maybe they had a loved one pass away. Now I seek comfort in my dinner every night, and I'm eating for two now, and there's a lot more going on than just calories in, calories out thing. That can't be fixed by medication. And that, yes, now this person is they were depressed and overweight, and now they're depressed. Okay, let's rewind a little bit. They were depressed, overweight, and a little had high body fat, we'll say. Mm-hmm. And now they're depressed. They're on weight, but they still have high body fat, right? And so body composition is more important than just a scale number. We kind of talked about that earlier. But GLP-1s, yes, they lose weight. Yes, they in a perfect world they'll help you lose body fat, but it doesn't address the issues that caused the obesity to even occur in the first place, right? And that's not to say that exercise is this immediate antidepressant that turns everyone into sunshine and rainbows, but it is a step in the right direction from what a lot of people have seen, and that it's pretty effective in terms of treating depression. And I'm not meaning to sit here and sound like an advertisement for exercise, but I think I am, actually. And that I think it is, and you can stop me if you disagree with me, but I think it is, diet and exercise is probably the best intervention we can use probably in medicine today, I would say. And that everyone wants the quick fix, and I get it. And it's hard to make money off diet and exercise. But in terms of fixing a problem with a concrete solution, I think it's as concrete as it gets.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
And I would also add lifestyle and just like environmental factors as well, because it kind of goes hand in hand. If you're living in a toxic environment with, a lot of fragrances, fragrances in pretty much every beauty product. Speaking as a woman, it's in pretty much every beauty product. Those are hormone disruptors. So, it affects the way your body works, like literally works. So if you're breathing in toxic fumes, you're not eating well, you're not exercising, you're basically just like setting yourself up for, I don't want to say failure, but you're setting yourself up for things that you don't want. And there's this saying that genetics load the gun, diet and lifestyle pull the trigger. So this is kind of going a little bit off topic, but we all have our different genetics, right? We all have different genetic makeups, and we all have certain genes, and their genes have an on and off switch. You have that gene and it can be dormant, or you have that gene and it could be the switch could be turned on. And there's genes for cancer, autoimmune disease, arthritis, cardiovascular disease, things like that. So you could have that gene, and it could be dormant, and then diet and lifestyle come along and you're not doing everything you can in those aspects, and it pulls a trigger, and then people get diagnosed with XYZ. Insert that illness here. So you could go your whole life with having this gene, and you're doing all the right things, and that gene never gets triggered, and you never have to deal with said illness. But something, and you never know what it is. It could be environmental, it could be diet, it could be lifestyle. Flips that switch, and then your gene is now flipped on, and your gene starts expressing itself in the form of a chronic illness or a chronic disease. So
yeah, and you hear that a lot about. It's become kind of a popular debate lately, and it has some truth to it, is that like obesity is inherited, and it's not something, it's out of my control completely, and that's like the very far end of the spectrum in that debate, but pointing to genetics as the main reason why we have obesity. Some people have thought that in the past, 20 years ago, and it was because most of the times when you see an overweight child, it's because the parents are overweight. And it's like, oh, clearly they inherited that. And literally, yes, they inherited those individuals' genes. But they also were raised in an environment that didn't exactly set them up for success, health-wise. And so, in your opinion, and from what you've learned, how much of a factor is genetic and genetic makeup in terms of health outcomes as it relates to obesity? Or, yeah, we'll stick with the obesity conversation.
I would say it plays a pretty big role. I'm not super educated on like the actual like science of it all. But I believe it does play a role. Like you said, you see an obese child, and you 99% of the time you turn to the parents, because the parents are the ones providing for the child, and they're also it's going to kind of trickle down from the adult to the child. So
but to change the topic a little bit, and we were talking about GLP-1s and Ozempic, and that debate has kind of become a little bit politicized, and that people are kind of taking sides with that. And the whole obesity conversation too has kind of become a little bit politicized. So with that being said, in the presidential election, who did you vote for and why? No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
I don't need to know that. I don't need to know that. But with that conversation, it has become politicized, and even in this past, presidential election, the conversation of GLP-1s has been talked about, like in Congress, and people are being kind of, everyone's always ugly about conversations like that, but it's very touchy, and the debate of, food dyes and additives and preservatives, and it's become very difficult to have that conversation online and with anyone really. So we're going to try to have that conversation without being too over the top with a lot of it. But recently we saw, I believe it wasn't red dye 40. It was
red dye number 3.
Number 3. It was
Matt,
2 or 3.
Can you fact check me again? It's not red dye 40, which is unfortunate because I believe all dyes should get the boot. But it's a step in the right direction. It's red dye number 3.
Yeah.
That one has been officially banned.
Yeah.
However,
because it was linked to cancer, right?
Right.
Yeah.
However, it's going to take several years for it to be completely out of food source, because they have to give the companies time to reformulate their products so that they don't just have to get rid of their product completely because they rely on the red dye number 3. So they have I think X number of years, I think it's 6 years or something like that, to, I could be wrong about the number of years, to reformulate their products and be compliant with the red dye number 3 ban. I believe they should have just shoved red dye number 40 in there as well and gotten rid of that one too. But there's a lot of talk about food dyes related to children. We keep coming back to the children, but children are the youth of America. They're the future of our world. So
it is our job to protect children. And our job, I'm 22 years old. It's not
right,
job.
I'm 26.
Yeah, but it is as an adult, it is your job to protect children, whether they're your offspring or not, right? Because it is they're babies. They don't know what's going on in the world. Yeah. They look up to us as the people that create the world around them, and they look to us on how to act and so they don't know what's right from wrong. And if we have the knowledge of what is right from wrong, or what is good for them or bad for them, we should do our part in that, exchange.
Yeah.
But you were saying about the red dyes. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay. There's a lot of talk about food dyes and food additives, more specifically food dyes, as it relates to behavior in children. Because I'm sure we've all been, at that restaurant, out in public, maybe in your own family, you have a child who, and of course they're kids, right? They love to just be children. That means running around, screaming, playing, and, just being a kid. But there comes a point where it may cross a line where it just becomes extreme hyperactivity. There may be behavioral issues, and I'm talking about negative behavioral issues, like hitting, screaming, punching, just having these massive meltdowns. I've witnessed it. I'm sure we've all seen that one kid who's just having a bad day, right? But there's been more talk about food dyes and how it affects these children's behaviors. So I've listened to interviews with actual parents who say, I give my child this candy or something that's basically just pure food dye, sugar and food dye. So think of a
Twizzler.
A Twizzler. Yeah, thank you. So it's just, it's a licorice stick and it's got red dye in it. I don't know which red dyes, but it has red dye. Obviously, it is a red candy. And, you give it to your kid. They're like, oh my gosh, candy. They're so excited for this candy. And then, 30 minutes later, you take this normal child who you just gave this piece of candy to, who has no behavioral issues, who is acting perfectly fine. 30 minutes later, after one Twizzler stick, they are just acting completely off the wall bonkers. And I'm not talking because the sugar is impacting them, although it probably is spiking their blood sugar. So it's, giving them that, sugar rush that we associate with most kids when we give them sugar. But it's their behavior is just things that the parents have never seen before. And then they take that candy away, or they don't give them any more of it, and they go back to normal. And so the fact that these dyes are being banned, even though it was just the one, red dye number 3, just the fact that it was banned to begin with, just in my mind, it's well, why would you continue to eat other things that have other dyes in them? If this one dye is being banned, doesn't mean that all the other ones are still good, or they are good. It is the same thing. It's just a different color, different number. It is artificial. It's added. And, it's not a naturally occurring color. Strawberries are red because they're strawberries and they're naturally red. So in my opinion, I don't think dyes are great for anybody, especially not the young, developing minds and bodies of small children.
My mom's a first grade teacher, and she has told me countless stories of kids, on like Valentine's Day when like they have the candy, right? And how that's an absolute nightmare of a day. And you brought up a good point about, you give a kid a Twizzler and they bounce off the walls, and we used to recognize that as, it's just a sugar high.
Yeah.
And it's kind of insane that you just accept, when I give my child candy, they turn into a monster. It's like, it's just the sugar. It's fine. It happens. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe we shouldn't give them that.
Right.
But yeah, and there has been a lot of research, and with the food dyes, with almost any research, there's always conflicting studies, and that almost nothing has ever been 100% proven correct. Mm-hmm. There's even if there's 1,000 studies proving that the Earth is round, there's gonna be one out there that's like, actually it's flat. And with anything, that's the case, right? And so whenever red dye number 3 got banned, I went on social media and I was like, let's see what the world thinks about this. And I went and looked, and obviously people kind of politicized it, and the immediate thing they pointed to was, it's not even 100% proven to cause cancer. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, for you to eat something, and say I go out in the forest and I find 2 sets of mushrooms, and it's like, okay, this mushroom, it may not give you cancer, but it might. It's like, okay, well, it's not proven that it won't give me cancer, so I'm going to eat it. It's like, well, we shouldn't have to prove that things we shouldn't have to prove that things give you cancer to ban them, right? Mm-hmm. And this is another fact that I'm going to throw out there that I read that I'm not positive is true. I'm pretty positive it's true. But I believe in European countries, and I wish I could name them, and I'm forgetting, but in European countries, whenever a new food dye is added, or a new artificial sweetener, or some kind of artificial preservative is added, it isn't added immediately after creation. It has to go through a cycle of testing to prove that it does not cause cancer over a longer, long-term study, we'll say.
Yep.
And from what I've seen in a lot of Western countries, and in this one in particular, it's kind of the opposite. And then you have to prove with, beyond a reasonable doubt that it is bad for you, it causes cancer, it's linked to this or that, or and that's really unfortunate. And I think we've seen the effects of this kind of play out in front of us, whether it's with the obesity epidemic, the heart disease epidemic, the rise in autism in children, right? And to kind of we're going to use that as a segue, but we're talking about food dyes. I think it was November of 2023. UT Health San Antonio, they did a study on aspartame, which is an artificial sweetener, and they saw that it was linked to autism in young boys. That whenever a mother was pregnant with a child, if they drank I don't know if they named the soda, but I think they said diet soda sweetened with aspartame, which is like your Diet Dr. Pepper, your Diet Coke. If they drank those once a day for the entire term of the pregnancy, that the child was significant. I forgot what number they put to it, but it was significantly times more likely to develop autism in their lifetime. And that's another thing that, okay, we're going to link aspartame to autism, and then there's going to be another study here in about 6 months. It's like, actually, we didn't find that true. It's like, okay, well then why don't we think about, hey, well, how did these guys find this true, right? And it's okay, yeah, and it's hard to, and that's the confusing part about science, right? Is that you have to find something, more probable than not. It has to be, there's equations to find how probable something is, and if that study can be replicated, and if we can use that study as fact, right? And it becomes complicated whenever research becomes politicized and research becomes biased. And I'm going on this tangent about politics, but it's kind of unfortunate what the current landscape is in terms of health. Health, wellness, and medicine in this country. But if you have anything else to add to that whole debate that I just went on, or tangent I just went on, I should say.
I think I agree with you that, it's everything is politicized, right? Like literally every life choice you make, somebody out there can link it to XYZ political party and can give you an argument for it, against it. That's basically what we do nowadays, is we argue with people about pretty much everything. But in my opinion, the one thing that we should come together about a lot of different things in this world, because we're not all here we're not going to be here forever. So in my opinion, let's just all get along. Easier said than done, right? Me speaking as one person. But is the one thing that I don't think we should negotiate on whatsoever is the health of Americans. And I wanted to talk about the European country thing. I have talked to clients who are from European countries, and they've come here. I spoke to a mom who's from Germany, and she was like, I am not used to these foods that my children are eating, because in Germany we don't have that. They eat whole foods. The school lunch program is completely different. And I'm like, why are we not following the school lunches for other countries? I'm sure you can Google this. School lunches in like Japan or Germany or Italy or Spain, and you look at it and it looks like a home cooked meal. And you come to America and you've got like processed chicken nuggets and milk from a carton and like Jell-O, and I don't even know what else. It's been a while since I've been to a school lunch, but I can tell you it was not great when I was in school, so I imagine it's not great now. So in my opinion, I don't think it should be as politicized as it is. I think we should just all agree that, we want what's best for everybody. So if a red dye is banned, ban the rest of them. You know what I mean? Like, just because it, kind of like you said, just because it may not give you cancer, but it also may give you cancer. And in my opinion, I'm not going to take a risk for something that may give me cancer. And I'm just gonna be like, oh, it's fine. I'm not going to get cancer. You don't know that. So I'm not going to put myself out there and, eat that thing that might give me cancer or another chronic disease, not even just cancer, but anything.
And, we're talking about cancer, and this kind of reminds me of the very strong debate around meat and its ties to cancer, and specifically red meat. And I remember in this nutrition class I took, we watched a documentary, and they kind of, laid that, referenced those studies and kind of spoke of it as fact, as red meat causes cancer at a very high rate, higher than, I think they compared it to smoking cigarettes at the rate of cancer development. And obviously red meat doesn't give you lung cancer. They were referencing, I think, prostate cancer for a lot of it. And I think, I'm not remembering that very well, but red meat causing cancer, right? And they use that as like a big umbrella term. And I'm going to share my opinion on that and from what I looked into it, and you can feel free to disagree with me. But, we were talking about studies earlier, and yes, there are studies that will show processed meats causing cancer, right? But they don't do a very good job of describing what they mean by processed meats. Mm-hmm. And the term process is thrown around a lot by a lot of, health nuts on social media talking about stay away from processed foods. And no one really defines what a processed food is, right? And in theory, if you look up what a processed food is, it's anything that comes in a wrapper and a package that went through any kind of development to become what it is right now.
Right.
So if I go and I buy bacon wrapped jalapeno poppers from H-E-B, to the average eye, that looks like a homemade meal in the little like wrap at H-E-B, and they have like the little tins. But under definition, that is processed, right? The cream cheese was created by man. The jalapeno did not wrap itself in bacon. Like, it was all created by man, and it's a process. Mm-hmm. Now, these studies, from what I was able to conclude, whenever they said processed meat, they were referencing like hot dogs, bologna, deli meats, stuff like that. And then they used those as their reference to say that meat was causing cancer. And I think that is a very strong umbrella claim to make whenever there are things like that. There are meats that are significantly less processed, like any cut of steak, any ground beef, any chicken, right? And we can have the organic and regular debate, but how much have you looked into the, I guess, nutritional benefits, pros and cons of meat consumption, and whether it's tied to cancer or not, processed or red or whatnot? Mm-hmm.
I honestly haven't done much research as it relates to cancer specifically, but I am of the opinion that, because there's ultra processed, which is like, your bologna, your hot dogs, which is basically just like meat parts, right? Formed into a hot dog or, whatever. But then there's also like different types of ground beef. You've got your 80-20, your 90-10, the one that's, less than that, 75-25. So, and again, that's technically a processed food, right? Because the cow had to be literally processed. They call it processing the cow to make the ground beef, right? But there's different quality levels to your ground beef, and your protein sources and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's just kind of what I look at mostly. I haven't done much research into the cancer aspect of it. I know people are big on the carnivore diet, where they just eat massive amounts of meat. And I'm not too familiar with the carnivore diet, like what else it entails besides eating meat. I don't know if people cut out completely everything else, like the carbs and the fats. Do you know?
From my understanding, there's a difference between carnivore and meat-based.
Okay.
And I've looked into this what he said about. Carnivore is exclusively meat. Okay. And it's almost exclusively red meat. Okay. Most people do it that way. Meat-based is much more reasonable in that it is meat, and it's primarily red meat, but it's also fruits. Okay. So you're getting some carbs in there. Yeah. Depending on your daily expenditure, maybe not enough carbs, but that's the difference between the two. Yeah. So the carnivore diet, if it's mostly red meat, that's one that I try to tell people to stay away from. I don't like to use the word good and bad when it refers to like diets or even like foods. I just kind of loop them into like things you should stay away from and things you should steer towards, because that goes into a whole other topic of like, how you talk about food can affect the way that people think about it and their relationship to food, and you have to be super careful so they don't give people like eating disorder type stuff. But to go back to the red meat thing, you should always diversify your protein sources. So, red meat is great. It has lots of iron, has lots of trace minerals in it that, we all need. So, your 80-20, 90-10 ground beef, that's all great. But you should also eat chicken. You should eat fish for omega-3, so salmon, whitefish. Tuna's okay, but tuna is kind of high in mercury, so you don't want to eat too much tuna. Not to say that you shouldn't eat it, but you should just minimize your amount of tuna. You're talking about minimizing red meat. Mm-hmm. And I find myself conflicted because I have a lot of people asking me about what their diet should look like relative to their fitness goals and about protein sources. And my advice is always to eat whatever you like eating in terms of your protein sources, right? And personally, I'm going to out myself a little bit here, but my protein sources are like, on a given 7-day week, it's probably like 60 to 75% red meat, like ground beef. I eat a ton of ground beef, like flirting with like a pound a day. Okay. So we'll find out if it causes cancer, I guess.
Give me 20 years.
Yeah, give it 20 years. We'll see how my prostate's doing then. I think it's fine. But anyways, so we'll see about that.
I think it's okay if you are also doing carbs.
Oh, I get carbs.
Okay, great. And fats. I think it's all about having balance. So if you're doing your pound of ground beef, having potatoes with it, having some form of starchy vegetable with it, something to kind of balance out the protein, and then, healthy fat. So cooking it with, avocado oil or olive oil. And then obviously pick a vegetable, you know what I mean? Don't just eat straight ground beef. That's not something I would recommend to people. I think you should definitely have a balance. If you need the protein, for somebody that like yourself or people that you work with that want the protein for the muscle building, just make sure that throw it all in a bowl, make ground beef with rice and broccoli and, Exactly make it a complete meal instead of just a pound of ground beef, which I'm sure you're not doing. But
no, I get my slop together with my ground beef and my rice, onions, throw some tomatoes in there. Yep. Now the vegetable to protein ratio is definitely not great.
Half of your plate should be vegetables. That's what I tell people.
Yeah, I'm under
half your plate should be vegetables, and if the other half has to be ground beef, that's fine. But just make sure that
I don't eat a pound at one time. It's like a lunch and dinner thing.
Okay.
It adds up, though, to a pound. Anyways, so earlier you talked about diversifying your protein sources. Mm-hmm. And we talked about cancer. What is your opinion on supplementation of protein? And we can talk about protein sources here a little bit too. So we're talking a lot about negative outcomes with nutrition, a lot right now. And we'll talk about this a little bit more at the end, but it's very hard for the average person to go about their day and eat properly without being a little scared of what they're eating, especially if you pay attention to the internet. Because everything causes cancer nowadays, it feels like, right?
Yeah.
And so take all of this with I guess a grain of salt, right? Don't be so obsessed with all of this all the time. But, I work at Gold's Gym. We sell protein bars. We sell a bunch of supplements. And there has been some research to show that protein bars, for example, are linked to some negative health outcomes relative to cancer specifically. We'll use that to also talk about some protein supplementation, right? So between your protein sources, like your whole food sources, and your protein supplements, if you can talk about that a little bit in terms of, I guess, priority, and that you should always prioritize whole food sources, but how much worse for you is my whey protein powder or my Anabar or my Premier Protein bar or something?
Yeah, so on a basic nutrition level, you have your complete proteins, you have your incomplete proteins, and that's talking about whole foods. So complete proteins are animal proteins, which have all of your amino acids. There's your plant sources of protein, so your vegan or your vegetarian options. So those are beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, grains. Those are incomplete proteins. So they still have proteins, but they don't have all of the amino acids in them. So for somebody that's plant-based, they call it, or you just combine different protein sources. So you do beans during one meal, you do lentils, you do nuts, seeds, you combine them all to gather all of your essential amino acids, whereas animal proteins, you only have to eat one or two of those to get all of the amino acids. So that's from a whole foods perspective. But if we're talking about protein powders, protein bars, I'm not against protein powders and protein bars. There are several protein powders out there that I recommend to people that are clean. They're made from animal protein, so they're made from beef protein, or beef tallow protein. So those are ones I recommend to people. There are ones out there that are also plant-based, because I know some people are vegan and they don't want the beef protein powder. But there are other ones out there, like the pre-made protein shakes. Those can have a lot of added sugar. If you aren't looking for that, it can be really sneaky added sugar. Artificial flavorings can also be in those, obviously, because they're cookies and cream, caramel,
It's 100 calories. And you're
yeah.
How is this 100? Yeah.
Right. So it's just about finding ones that are clean, because there are ones out there, and I could name drop a couple that I recommend to people that I eat, that I drink. Taylor Duke's Wellness, love her. Her protein powder is really clean. There's another one called Be Well. That's a clean protein powder. Only What You Need is the plant-based one. So if there's anybody out there who's vegan and doesn't want to do the beef, Only What You Need is plant-based protein that's pretty clean. I can't think of any other ones off the top of my head. I have a list on my computer, but
Those are pretty good. So you mentioned the pre-made shakes, and there's some evidence to show some of the Fairlife stuff and some of the pre-made stuff aren't great for your gut health. Which, we're using protein supplements as an example of something that's not great for your gut health. A lot of stuff isn't great for your gut health, right? So it's not just a protein bar or a protein shake. A hot dog is probably not very good for your gut health, right? But I say that to say I don't have a very amazing understanding of gut health and how it affects the rest of your body, right? And I've heard people talk about how your gut microbiome is almost it should be up there with your brain in terms of how much it affects your body, your brain and your hormones. I assume you have a little bit of knowledge on that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you could talk about how, I guess for one, how these protein supplements could negatively affect, or any food as a matter, could negatively affect your gut health. And then for one, why your gut health is so important.
Yeah. So I guess I should have prefaced this at the beginning of this podcast, but my master's degree in integrative and functional nutrition looks at a deeper level and a more comprehensive look at the whole body. So it takes into account whole body nutrition. So we're talking environment, lifestyle, diet, exercise, all the things. And it also looks at your individual genetic makeup and how that affects your outward expression and your food allergies, things like that. So to go back to the gut microbiome, it is literally like, they call it, the gut microbiome is directly related to basically everything that you are essentially as a human being. So to talk about the protein shakes, the pre-made protein shakes, a lot of those have gums. So xanthan gum is probably the one that people are most familiar with. It's a thickener, so they use it to make things thick, but it can also disrupt your gut microbiome. And a lot of people can experience bloating, GI discomfort from it because it's thickening things, but it's also messing with the things that are inside. So, it can bind to your intestines and things like that. People don't digest it properly and you can cause bloating. So that's what I try to look at when I'm, people ask me about these pre-made protein shakes. I'm like, well, does it have xanthan gum in it? Or does it have, any other artificial sweetener or thickener or things like that? And then the gut microbiome, they call it the gut-brain barrier, or the gut-brain axis. I'm sorry. So your gut is directly related to your brain. So there's like little thousands and millions of little microbes in your gut, like literally living things in your gut, that help digest all the food that you're eating. And there can be this thing called leaky gut, where you have a small, we're not talking a massive hole, but like a teeny tiny little hole somewhere in your digestive tract. And when you eat something, so say you're eating ice cream, for example, lactose, dairy, right? You eat it, you have this leaky gut. Tiny, tiny, tiny little particles of this dairy and this lactose is leaking into your system, like the rest of your body. It's leaving your digestive tract. It's going to the rest of your body. And your body's sees this thing floating around, this lactose, this ice cream. It's like, this is a foreign body. We need to launch like an attack on this thing, right? And that's where food allergies come from, or where they can come from. They can come from a lot of other things too. But leaky gut can cause a lot of food intolerances. So gluten and dairy are pretty much the most common food intolerances. Those small particles leak through your gut and your body's like, wait, whoa, this is not supposed to be here. Let's launch an attack on this thing. And every time we come in contact with this certain thing, we're going to have a reaction to it. And it can react in a multitude of ways. People get, like I said, GI discomfort, bloating. It can be topical, so your skin can react. You can get eczema, rashes, hives. You can feel brain fog. There are so many things that food allergies and leaking gut can express themselves as. It just kind of depends, varies person to person. But
yeah, that's a lot of good info. I didn't know.
It's a lot. It goes a lot deeper than that. I gave the basic. Yeah,
I've heard some of that before. And I find that very interesting because recently, I can talk about this. Recently, I had an infection, and I had staph. Because infection sounds very
ominous.
I don't want people thinking I'm nasty. I had a staph infection. It happens. People get them. Anyways, it's gone now. It's fine. Anyways, I was on antibiotics for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And some people, whenever they get on antibiotics, they have like a negative effects on your gut health. Yep. And I was worried about that happening because I can't remember last time I took antibiotics. Probably like, I don't know if I've ever taken antibiotics. I've never had any major surgeries or anything to where I needed to, and I never had that was the first time I ever had like any significant infection. Anyways, I was very worried about the effects on my gut health, and knowing very little about my gut health and how I can protect my gut microbiome or better it or for whatever. After I got off the antibiotics, I started to add more fermented foods into my diet. So I've been chugging kombucha lately and a ton of Greek yogurts. And with that being said, that could be all for nothing. I don't know if that really helps or not, which is why I'm talking to you about it, right? So for someone that wants to give a little bit more attention to their gut health, right? And try to work on that if that's an issue. If they feel like maybe their eczema or their brain fog could be maybe tied to their gut health. Mm-hmm. If there's someone that wants to improve their gut health, how would they go about doing that? Or someone like me that just got off antibiotics. And it's like,
yeah, the antibiotics thing is definitely kind of a different conversation. I have heard and I have seen kind of supplementing with certain vitamins, minerals, other supplements, along with the antibiotics, because antibiotics are good. Obviously, it gets rid of the infection because you can't have that. You can't have that in your body. But they do alter your gut microbiome because, it's getting rid of the infection. So there are preventative steps you can take to kind of not mitigate the effects of the antibiotic because you still want them to work, but just protect your body from any adverse effects. Like, you want it to take care of the infection, but you don't want it to do anything else to you. There are certain supplements that you can take. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't want to spew any and not be correct, so I'm not going to name drop any right now, but there definitely are protocols that you can follow for that kind of thing. But if you're concerned about gut health in general, or if you notice that you eat certain things and you have adverse reactions, whatever that adverse reaction may be, my immediate, when I have a client that comes to me with that kind of thing, my line of questioning goes to, when you eat certain things, are you noticing certain effects? So when you eat dairy, when you eat gluten, when you eat corn, soy, like I kind of go through like the major allergen list, just to kind of see if I can pinpoint if it's a certain thing causing their adverse reaction. And if they can, they tell me, every time I have a glass of milk or I have, ice cream, I notice that, my skin breaks out or I get eczema or I just feel like really bloated. I'm like, okay, well, maybe for a week or 2-3 weeks, let's not do dairy. And people tend to freak out when I tell them to stop eating dairy products or gluten products because, it's in everything. And people are so used to just having cheese on everything. And, we love cheese. People love cheese. But when I tell them, hey, let's try to not do, this food group for a little while, they kind of freak out because people aren't used to that kind of thing. But, I've had people that have done it and have come back to me and they're like, yeah, that thing cleared up. And I'm like, well, then I hate to break it to you, but you might be allergic to dairy. You know what I mean? And it might not be just dairy. Some people are allergic to oats or, back to the food dye thing, could be a food dye thing. So it just kind of depends and it varies person to person. But if you ever notice that, one thing or another affects your gut health or you just feel like not your best, maybe stop eating that thing for like a little while and see if it subsides and, that kind of thing.
Moving past the gut health thing, that was trying to address the average person that's wanting to work on their gut health. For someone that wants to work on just their overall nutrition, and I know we've talked about a lot so far, there can be a lot of different rabbit holes when someone wants to address their nutrition. It can be kind of a lot, it can be distracting, it can be overwhelming at times. You can lead to this over-analysis of what's good for me, what's not. Mm-hmm. So for the average Joe that is, working a normal 9 to 5, exercising twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever, how can they better their nutrition? And obviously it's a case-by-case thing and it does depend on a lot, but forget that for a moment. In a big umbrella term, right? What can the average person do to improve their nutrition? Is it maybe getting calories in check? Is it maybe hitting macros? Is it maybe making better food selection? Mm-hmm.
I think that's all important, right? But I've had people that have come to me and they're like, they don't have any chronic disease. They don't have any chronic illness. They just want exactly what you said. They just want to look good, feel good, just have a better approach to food. And it can be overwhelming to count your macros, to go on a really specific diet. So I just tend to start people off with, what can we do to get you the most whole foods possible? I'm like, I don't want you to count your calories right now. I don't want you to do any of that. Maybe down the line that person does well and we can start doing that kind of thing. But that can be super overwhelming for a lot of people. So if we're talking about the average Joe, my rule of thumb is always stick to the outside of the grocery store.
It's funny you say that. I use that exact saying with all of my clients.
It's true. Yes. That's where the produce is, yes. The meat, the cheese, the eggs, the dairy, if you don't avoid any of those things, that's where they all are. The closer you get to the inside of the grocery store, obviously if you need bread, that's okay, go get bread. But there's aisles and aisles upon aisles of just boxed processed chips, candies, snack foods, all that kind of stuff. And again, I'm not saying avoid the inside of the grocery store, because there are important things in there, so if you need a sauce or a bread, or whatever you need in there. But I'm talking about avoiding the ultra processed foods that we talked about earlier. So your Doritos, your Fritos, your Lay's, your Goldfish, that kind of stuff. Your sodas. Not a fan of sodas. So that's my tip to people to go along with what you said. Stick to the outside of the grocery store. If you got to go to the inside for something, that's okay. Yeah. But just, and I also try to tell people, go into the grocery store with a plan. And I think you were going to ask me about budget friendly ways.
Yes.
So I guess that kind of goes with the average person, because the average person, life is expensive, right? Eggs are $8 a dozen. It's crazy expensive eggs. So, and I'm sure we've all been there. You've been there. I've been there. You go into the grocery store for one thing and you're hungry and you're like, oh no, I'm going to eat when I get home. I'm going to make dinner when I get home. But you go to the grocery store for that one thing on your way home from work and you see a snack and you're like, I'm hungry. I'm going to get that thing. Well, if you go on if you're planning your whole grocery store tour or your whole grocery store trip to get all your groceries for the week and you're starving, you're going to see that, that candy, that chip, and you're going to be like, that looks really good. I'm going to get that. And it wasn't on your list. Or if you don't have a list, then, you're just going to start throwing things in your basket. And I've been guilty of that. I see a new product and I'm like, this looks really good. I'm going to try this. So I always tell people, try to plan out your week as best you can. If you're going to be busy on Tuesday night, maybe you're doing a sheet pan where you throw everything onto a baking tray and you throw it in the oven for 45 minutes and it comes out and everything's done and you throw it all in a bowl. That's what I tell people a lot of time. A lot of people do Instant Pot, Crock Pot. You can, turn those on when you're not at home. If you have to go to work that day or while you're working from home, it's cooking in the kitchen, you're smelling it all day. You're like, man, I can't wait to eat that for dinner. So it just kind of encourages people to eat at home. So I think it's about small steps at first for the average person, because somebody like you or me who's kind of more experienced with the nutrition and the diet and exercise, it can be a lot to throw at people, especially if they're just following the typical American Western diet. If you're telling them, okay, we're going to get rid of dairy and gluten and you can't eat this and you can't eat that, they're going to be like, whoa, that's not why I came to you. I didn't want you to tell me that I couldn't eat all of these things. So I try to start slow. And then as they get more comfortable, then I'm like, okay, now we're going to do this thing. And then maybe it's a little bit more aggressive. But it depends on who I'm talking to. So that's something you got to take into account, is who you're talking to, because you don't want to scare them away.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the majority of, well, I don't know, to be honest. I would think the majority of the people that listen to this podcast are people that in some degree still have some kind of athletic capacity, right? And they're still trying to be athletic in some endeavor, or they're a weekend warrior of some variety. So for those people that are a little bit more concerned about how they feel whenever they perform whatever activity they want to perform, whether it's any type of combat sport, powerlifting, basketball, whatever it is, for those people, and I know different sports have different energy demands, and that differs a lot on your nutrition, but for someone like that, for someone that wants to be a little bit more focused on their athletic performance, I see a lot of these people. I do jiu-jitsu, and a lot of these people in this jiu-jitsu world follow Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan's a real big carnivore guy. So everyone, not everyone, being dramatic, a lot of people that do jiu-jitsu want to follow this carnivore diet. And if you have an autoimmune disease or if you are diabetic, this got some benefits for you, in my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm incorrect. But from my understanding, that seems beneficial. But for someone that wants to perform at their best, cutting out carbohydrates entirely is going in the opposite direction in terms of positive performance, from my understanding, and how I know nutrition affects exercise and performance. So outside of that, do you have any tips for someone that is an athlete that wants to either maintain their performance, maintain their longevity, increase their performance on a given day, increase their energy capacity, anything like that?
I think protein and carbs are the most important. And when I say carbs, I mean complex carbohydrates. So you have your simple carbohydrates, which are, refined grains and sugars. So those are going to spike your blood sugar really, really fast, and your body's going to digest them really, really fast, and then you're going to be left with nothing, just kind of like a crash. But your complex carbs, which are like your grains, so your brown rice, your basmati rice, your starchy vegetables, potatoes, those are digested slower. So they help your blood sugar. They do raise your blood sugar, obviously, because your blood sugar raises when you eat, but you don't go down so quickly. And obviously protein is important for muscle building. Got to have protein if you want to build your muscles. And it also helps to keep you full. So if you have a balanced meal with lots of protein and carbs, you're going to be less likely to be hungry afterwards, which can, go into effect if you're counting your calories and you don't want to overeat, or you're in a calorie deficit and you want to expend more calories than you're intaking. And then carbohydrates. So glycogen is the storage form of glucose. So carbohydrates are stored as glycogen, and they're essential for muscle function. And people don't really realize that, because people are like, oh my gosh, I can't have any more carbs. Carbs are bad. Carbs are going to make me overweight. They're going to make me heavy. I'm like, no, actually, you need carbohydrates. You just need to eat the right kind of carbohydrates. And so when you exercise, glycogen, the storage form of glucose, is stored in your muscles and your liver. So when you exercise, your body takes that glycogen and it breaks it down and it uses it as energy. So, you're going to the gym on an empty stomach, you may not feel as energized or as powerful as if you had eaten something beforehand. Or, you go to the gym on an empty stomach and you do your lift or whatever you're doing at the gym, and you come home and you don't eat anything. Your body's like, I am grasping for anything to pull energy from. You know what I mean? So you gotta put back all that energy that you just expended at the gym. So that comes from protein, it comes from carbs. And you need fats too, healthy fats. So, avocados, oils, they're important for hormone production, because your body makes hormones from fats. And they also help your body absorb like the fat soluble vitamins. So vitamin A, D, E, and K, which are all important. All the vitamins are important. So, from a macro standpoint, that's kind of why they're all important, why you should have at least a little bit of everything when you eat. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another thing that a lot of people get, there's a lot of confusion about, is electrolytes. Mm-hmm. And that it just kind of also plays into the whole athlete conversation. But sodium's been demonized for the last 30 years, longer than that, for a very long time, as it relates to its effects on blood pressure. Now, as a 30-year-old man who does jiu-jitsu 7 days a week, and listens to the internet, and his doctor says avoid sodium, because you don't want to, mess with your blood pressure. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they avoid sodium. They never salt their food. They stay away from any high sodium products. That could have a negative effect on his electrolyte content. Mm-hmm. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay. So with that being said, can you explain electrolytes a little bit more, and the importance of them, and then maybe how an average person can prioritize getting their electrolytes in a day, whether it's through supplementation, through certain different variations of salt, stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. So electrolytes are pretty important. It has a lot to do with fluid balance and ions in your body, and just making sure that your body is hydrated, your water content in your body is staying balanced. So, if you're outside sweating, we live in Texas, summer's coming, it's going to be 120 degrees outside soon, and the minute you step outside, you're going to start sweating.
It's 90 later today.
Yeah, it's hot, right?
It was freezing 2 weeks ago.
So when it comes to electrolytes, there's this thing in your body called the sodium-potassium pump, and it's been a while since I was in biochem, so I don't remember exactly what number of sodium ions go in and what number of potassium ions come out, but there's an exchange that happens in the pump.
I knew this.
I used to know it like the back of my hand, but it's been a while since I was an undergrad. But anyways, there's an exchange that happens with the sodium and the potassium, and it has to be balanced, right? Because I know it's going to bother me. Yeah. My God, can you look it up?
Dr. Max is so upset with me.
Can you look up the sodium potassium pump? What comes out? Yeah. And it's crucial for muscle contraction and the transmission of nerve signals. So I always think about this. My dad was a marathon runner when my brother and I were little. and we would go to his races, and, you know, we're waiting for him to cross the finish line. You see all these people, and they are just like absolutely dying. You know, you can see their calves are cramping up, their thighs are cramping up. You know, you get the abdominal cramps, that kind of thing. That's because they're probably dehydrated after running 26.2 miles, right? And their body, their nerves are just involuntarily contracting because they don't have the right fluid balance, sodium potassium balance. So their muscles are just absolutely locking up because there's no hydration in there for them. So sodium, potassium, calcium, and it's not magnesium. I don't remember what the other one is.
Talking about other electrolytes?
Yes.
What'd you say?
Sodium, potassium, calcium.
Sodium, potassium, calcium.
Isn't there one that's
magnesium's an electrolyte?
Is it magnesium? There might be a little bit of magnesium. I don't remember which one. Sodium, potassium, and calcium are the big ones, though. Those are what are typically in electrolyte packets or electrolyte, supplements, I guess you call them. Mm-hmm. But there are differing quality levels because there are some out there, like I think there's a lot of the liquid ones, if you have to squeeze it into your water and it's colored or flavored, there's sugar in there, which is not terrible, but it is added sugar, which may, kind of go against what you're trying to do. So I really like this brand. I'm going to name drop again because I'm a big fan of electrolyte drinks, not to drink all day, every day, but to drink like maybe once after a really intense workout or, again, outside being in Texas, you're sweating. Element, LMNT.
Very popular.
Yep. You can find them on Amazon.
Sponsor the show.
Sponsor the show. Please. I love you. You can buy them on Amazon. You can buy like a variety pack. They have lots of different flavors. Big fan. Another one that I just tried recently is called Buoy, Buoy. They do the liquid one that you squeeze into your water, but it's clear and unflavored. So there's no added sugars or anything like that. That brand is really awesome. Sponsor the show. Yeah, so those are the two that I recommend to people to kind of replenish after you've exercised. Again, I don't really recommend. Well, I don't want to say I don't recommend because everybody's different, but I don't always tell people like just to drink it all day, every day. I usually say after a really intense workout, after you sit in the sauna, after you go on a run, after you're outside, after you sweat a lot and your body loses a lot of water content, have one of those packets to replenish what you just lost. So that way you don't end up with muscle cramps.
I used to never concern myself with electrolytes whenever I was younger, and I didn't concern myself with much, anything at all when I was younger. But electrolytes specifically, until like going into I think it was my junior year of college, I was playing at an open gym back home, so like near Corpus, and I played for like probably like 3.5 hours, something crazy, and I was playing basketball, and I sweated a lot, obviously, and then afterwards we're going to eat, and I'm with some friends, and my heartbeat is just off, like spiking, and I couldn't get control of it, like I couldn't calm down, and then the room starts to go dim, and everything feels really numb, and I was like, oh, I'm dying. I'm having
this is it.
I'm having some kind of cardiac event. This is where I go. I'm dying in this butter churn. And Butter Churn's a good restaurant. And
sponsor the show.
Yeah, sponsor the show, please. And so I go to the ER because I thought I was dying. And so I go to the ER, and they're just they take my blood work and like, oh, well, a lot of your electrolytes are really low.
Yeah.
Like really, really low, and my potassium specifically. Mm-hmm. And they were telling me that my electrolytes were so low that it was causing some pretty severe heart palpitations. Mm-hmm. And then me overreacting to the heart palpitations, I gave myself a panic attack.
Oh gosh.
And so that was the whole me feeling like I was dying thing. And that was the worst feeling I have ever had physically in my entire life. I legitimately, in my mind, thought, all right, like, I'm dying. Let's get my ducks in order before I lose consciousness in my, and so I never want to have that feeling again. Mm-hmm. And so since then, I've really kind of locked in on my electrolytes, and I may be going over the top with it, to be honest. No, I don't think so. I think I'm doing an appropriate amount of electrolyte supplementation. But I have my like electrolyte supplements, and I normally drink them like every night, sometimes in the morning too. But it's because I'll drink them after jiu-jitsu, which is like an hour to an hour and a half. And normally I'm pretty drenched after that, whether it's in my sweat or someone else's sweat. It's always very hard to tell. But there's pools of sweat. And then I sweat throughout the day normally, with my job, and I put people through workouts and stuff. And so I'm carrying weights and I'm sweating. And so I think I'm doing an appropriate amount of supplementation. Now, to your knowledge, is there any negative effects with over supplementation of electrolytes? Maybe, I mean, obviously we know what an excess in sodium can do to your blood pressure, but maybe an excess in like potassium or anything in specific, or maybe it's sodium.
Sodium, definitely.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, I have not done much research on too much potassium. I know your body will just excrete what it doesn't need most of the time. But I'm not sure of like the long-term health effects of too much potassium. I do tell people though that they should sweat often. Sweating is good. Most people, there are certain places where you maybe don't want to sweat. You're like going to a nice event. You're like, oh, my armpits are really sweaty today. And that's like not the place where you want your armpits to be sweating. But like when you go to the gym, when you exercise, when you do anything physical, like you want to be sweating because that is your body getting rid of toxins through sweat. So there's like certain points on your body. So your armpits are obviously the biggest one. Your groin is another one. Your forehead, your face. Those are like the biggest areas of like sweat glands. And it's good when you sweat, obviously, because your body's getting rid of things. And so, but I also have friends that are like, I don't sweat. I'm like, well, that's really strange. You should sweat. And this is kind of going kind of a left turn here, but there's a lot of products, and deodorant is the biggest one. And I'll die on this hill. Aluminum in deodorant is probably one of the worst things you can do for your body. And aluminum is in deodorant to stop you from sweating. It clogs your pores up so that you don't sweat, which is, what people want. People are like, oh, deodorant helps me not sweat, helps me not smell. Yes, but also it is clogging your pores, and then your body is not able to get rid of the things it needs to get rid of. So there's the aluminum-free deodorants that are pretty popular now. I'm a big fan of but here's another thing, is that your body will naturally adjust. So I used to use deodorant that had aluminum in it because I didn't know any better. And, I was an athlete, I was a dancer. I was like, I don't want to be sweaty. I'm working out. I don't want to be sweaty. But your body naturally adjusts after a period of time. If you get rid of the aluminum in your deodorant and you switch to one that doesn't have any, your body naturally adjusts. You're going to sweat a little bit. It's like, it's normal. Like, it's okay. But you're not going to sweat as much as you think you are. And you're going to smell fine because if you pick the right one, the fragrances are organically fragranced, not with harsh chemical fragrances. So you're still going to smell great. Another one, I'm going to keep name dropping on this podcast so that you can get somebody to sponsor you. Primally Pure, their deodorant is the best deodorant ever, and you can put it on a subscription, so it comes to your house every month. You don't have to worry about it.
Good to know. Yeah, I think it is kind of funny the whole deodorant industry in itself is that we're trying to stop a naturally occurring process from happening in our bodies, which is kind of funny. And I get it. Some people are smelly.
Yeah.
As a smelly individual myself, I try to use a natural deodorant, and for like 6 months when I first switched to it, it was hell. It's hard for everyone around me.
Your body's getting used to what's happening. Yes.
Yeah, but now it works fine, and I don't think I smell. I'm sure I'll probably have someone tell me otherwise. But as we wind this down, Emily, earlier you talked about kind of your small business that you're starting up, and you kind of touched on that a little bit. Do you have anything else to add about that? I want to give you the floor to
to plug
shout yourself out.
Yeah, so I have a website. I have an Instagram. I don't have TikTok. I'm just going to do the Instagram thing. But it is Auravita, so A-U-R-A, Vita, V-I-T-A, one word, wellness. So you can do auravitawellness.com. That's my website, has my prices on there, has kind of like what I do. You can book a session with me if you want me to be your nutritionist. And then my Instagram is Auravita_wellness. There's a picture of me on there, so you'll know it's me. It's all very small. We're still kind of getting a kickstart on it, but I take any client that is willing to have me as a nutritionist, no matter what your goals are. If they're big, if they're small, if you have chronic disease, if you just want to look good, feel good, you can come talk to me about food. Trez can be your personal trainer. We can tag team this thing. That way you can get the best of both worlds. But yeah, just the Instagram and the website.
Alrighty. So yeah, check out Auravita.com.
Auravitawellness.com.
Auravitawellness.com. Yeah. I took a look at it. That's a nice website.
Thank you. I built it myself.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better than I could have done. Yeah,
Shout out to
I'm
Squarespace.
sticking to just the
Sponsor the podcast.
Yeah. Maybe I need a website now. We'll
You
see.
do. I'll make it for you.
Yeah, we'll use that. Alrighty, Emily. I think that's everything. I think we covered everything. We done did it.
We done did it.
We done did it. Alrighty. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.